Welcome to another One Soccer Today special season in review edition. Gareth Wheeler, Oliver Platt, Jordan Wilson with you as it's the latest of our installments of deep dives into the season that was in 2023 for each and every one of the Canadian professional club teams. And today, our focus, our gaze turns, way to the West Coast. Pacific FC finished in fourth place in the Canadian Premier League table in the season, 40 points in 28 games, ended up beating York United in that play-in matchup. They tried to run the gauntlet. They went to the East Coast, came up with a statement victory over Halifax Wanderers, making their way to really the semifinal with a chance to punch their ticket to the final where they were beat by Cavalry FC. They did beat Cavalry, however, in TSS Rovers in the Canadian Championships before falling to the Vancouver Whitecaps at home. It was a 3-0 final. The season started with so much promise, then seemingly dysfunction came into the ranks, and they ended the season, the regular season, with a giant thud before giving a glimmer of hope for a short playoff run. So let's do what we do each and every time and provide our grades for the season that was first and foremost, and then we'll get into it. So on the count of three, the reveal, gentlemen. 1, 2, 3.
Wow. Harsh.
I got a C minus, a B with some sort of ghost, or is that Grimace?
That's Stewie the Starfish. I'm not a fan of Stewie the Starfish. I think he was always looking for the camera, so that's why I put an X on him. But it's a B minus.
B minus, C, and C. This is a wide array of.
That's the widest range I think we've had.
And the most Stewie the Starfish hate that has ever aired on One Soccer. Okay, Ollie, kick us off here. B minus, the highest grade of all of us. What makes you think they're worthy of a B minus grade?
Let's hear it.
Well, I think if you describe the end results for Pacific, it doesn't sound all that bad. Look, I understand that people are going to remember that season differently because of the way the second half of the season went. They led the league for so long. It's going to feel disappointing not to at least, be first or second going into the playoffs. And then potentially to even be making a final. But like when you actually look at the end of it, they were very good for the first half of the season. Second half didn't go as well as they would have wanted, but they still finished fourth. They won 2 playoff games. That was as many as anyone else in the playoffs. Got through Halifax away from home in that second match after beating York United. And they also went to the Canadian Championship semi-finals where they fell to the Vancouver Whitecaps. So there's obviously more context than that, where there was some disappointments, there was some letdowns from Pacific. I'm not trying to deny that. But when you actually look at the end result of the season, where they finished, the amount of points they had in comparison to the other teams around them, the 2 playoff wins, the way they advanced in the Canadian Championship, I don't think you can go below the B range, to be honest with you.
Wow. Okay. Oliver Platt, very positive take from the 2023 season. A C grade is far lower than that. Jordan, explain yourself. Why is Ollie wrong?
Ollie is wrong. Well, first, whatever you drank this morning, I want a piece of it, because optimism this time of year, when it's cold and it goes straight to your bones, I would love it. And seeing you smile and optimistic, Ollie, and very cheerful, I love that for you. But you're wrong. No. For 2 months, this team could not buy a win. They were there praying to the soccer gods to go buy a 3 points, and were denied week in and week out. They were sitting pretty in first and finished fourth in average. They do not pass a C. Maybe I could give them a C plus. Maybe. Wheels, did you give them a C plus?
C minus. C minus.
Hey, like a C is satisfactory. The way that they went up, the way that they went down, for me, they're right in the middle of average. Halfway through the season, a quarter way through the season, around that time we were talking about who we're gonna pick and who we're gonna back. And honestly, Pacific ended up being third or fourth for me. I was thinking that Halifax are finishing fifth, even though I trusted the process and I knew they had new bodies coming in. I just didn't see them doing such a rapid rise and finishing third the way that they did. Still couldn't count out Forge, still couldn't count out Cavalry. And Pacific is a team that plays good football, but when it's time to go and get it done, usually doesn't. So they finished where you kind of thought that they would. But I think why they finished at a C for me, or why I have to grade them there, is because they were sitting pretty on the mountaintop. You should fall to second or third. You should not go to fourth and then make a little bit of run. I think it's valiant that you're giving them credit for the 2 wins. I think that's also great in crunch time. It seemed very promising. But regardless, if they didn't get to a final, basically being at first, you're like, this was a season where you guys choked. They really fell off. A C is granted. I could not give them a higher grade.
Well done. These grades are given based on expectation. And that was a squad that was capable of winning the Canadian Premier League. And let's be honest, they were miles off. Remember, they started the season. They had 1 loss in their first 12 games. I believe it was Oliver Platt on One Soccer Today proclaiming at that time, we know who's going to finish first and second. No, we don't. No, we didn't. Because this specific collapse was
I think it said
it started with problems at the goalkeeping position where it was erratic from start to finish. And then it played out in attack where every game James Merriman was forced to shuffle the deck. You never knew what 3 or 4 players would lead the line for this team because no one was consistently good enough to warrant a place in the team. They finished this season with 1 win in their last 6 games, 2 wins in their final 10 to finish the regular season. Nowhere good enough. There was opportunity to climb. Instead, they played a depleted York United side in that first playoff game, hung on for their dear lives to advance. They did win. And then they went to Halifax, a team that played very naive, not a whole lot of experience, and grinded out the slimmest of victories there as well. Any other day, Halifax win that game. Look, give them credit. They pulled it off, but it was the dysfunction. It didn't seem like the players got on with one another. We didn't know what the heck was going on. It was just a very weird season for Pacific. And for me, they underachieved. And Ollie said this on this program pertaining to the women's national team. It's all about seeing the way that they play. Well, what about the way that this team played? They weren't connected. I don't just. Anyways, I'm not going to pick on Oliver Platt here, but just a C minus, that range, that's where they should fall. That's the real grading here.
I understand the perspective, but I don't think you can just throw out all the good football that they did play in the first half of the season as well. They ended up, when you look at the 28 games in total, we all gave Halifax A's, right? They were 2 points behind Halifax at the end of the season, then beat them in the playoffs on their own pitch. Like, I just don't think you can go that much lower.
My old phys ed teacher, Mr. McAdam from MM Robinson High School in Burlington, Ontario, said, be a good starter and a good finisher. He also said Tata Poti on the consecrate. Had no idea what that meant, but be a good starter and a good finisher. Who is your star performer for Pacific on the season, Jordan Wilson?
I'm going to go with Big TMG. Thomas Meyer-Jaguar. I thought, look, star performer, of course, you can pick a Didic. Of course, off of stats, you can pick a Salufa. Of course, Manny Aparicio is always a name that you could say because if he plays 75% of the matches, he's probably influential in all of those matches. But Thomas Meyer-Jaguar, I like watching players that are getting better and better each and every year. And I think he put it together this year, not just only with his 4 goals. I thought with his leadership, I thought with his distribution out of the back, and also just with his consistency. Didic, he was also consistent. They play in that, for me, was still the best partnership in terms of 2 center backs in the Canadian Premier League season for 2023. But I just love the way he went about his business this year. I think that he really stepped up in a moment. And with a lot of inconsistency on the attacking front, the back line, which he was a part of, they were solid for the majority of the season.
Oliver Platt, who's your candidate?
I think there's a few candidates. I think it was one of those teams where a number of players had good years. Maybe no one really excelled in the way, at least that you think they have the potential to. When you look at Manny Aparicio and Amir Didic, I think these players all were good. I think they have also maybe had better seasons or spells of seasons where they didn't quite hit their highest high. I'll go with Sean Young. Again, it's someone who I think was more impactful in the first half of the season, maybe than the second, at least on the score sheet, scoring goals, creating goals out the gate. But I think part of that was just the way that he got moved around quite a lot in the second half of the season, different systems, He was even playing, in the back line at times, but certainly tending to play in deeper spots in the second half of the year rather than the more advanced role he started with. But I thought overall through the course of the season, he was very good.
Interesting, the name Eamon Salouf not put forward. 7 goals, 8 assists. Only started about half their games, not in crunch time. He produced, but what was the missing ingredient? Was it the team around him? Was it his fit? It's a really curious case. Look, this team riddled with Canadian Premier League star power. It's just hard to say anyone had an exceptional season. A lot of really, really great moments and spurts by certain players. At the end of the year, Reed and Mane really stepped up, but over the course of the duration of the schedule, the consistency simply wasn't there. Perhaps Didic, perhaps TMG. I don't know. What was your biggest disappointment, Oliver Platt?
You could probably pick a couple of things here. I'm going to focus in on one, which was 2 regular season results in that second half of the year, which didn't go the way they wanted, that I thought were particularly poor and particularly costly when you looked at the final standings. And it was the 2 matches in the second half of the season against their new BC rivals, Vancouver. They just had 2 ugly days. The first one in Langley, they're up 2-1 with 15 minutes to go. Gabriel Bitar inspires Vancouver to win that game 3-2. And then back at Starlight Stadium, they play this game and go 2-0 down at halftime against Vancouver and just again, put themselves in a hole that they couldn't get out of, end up losing that game 2-1. So it was 2 games where I felt they dropped points that were there for them against the team, with all due respect, that, finished 7th in the table. You just get 1 win in those games, which again, I think was right there for them to take. And you're talking about a team that, that is in that mix for 2nd and 3rd rather than slipping to 4th.
Jordan, what about you?
Biggest disappointment for 2023? I think for me, it's not knowing your attacking 3 going into the last matches of the season. Yeah. Look, this is not a slate on James Merriman. This is not a slate on Pacific. This is just me calling a spade in terms of playing the game of football, and you have 28 games. And you also had Can Champs as well, where you played, and you could figure out who are going to be your big dogs, so who are going to be the team that you ride with. I think all those players going into that, the Eamon Salouf could get thrown in there. You could look at the whole squad, really. I think Adonijah Reed had a decent first year for sure, talented young man. But how do you not go into your last matches knowing who is the guy? And I think that has to come down to the players. I think you have to go and show yourself week in and week out and be like, play me. I think they all had moments of, this is my time, but they weren't consistent enough with it to say, I want to be that guy. They were feeling it one day, they weren't feeling it the next day. James Merriman had no trust, and you could see it because he was just shuffling the deck of cards of who to play on the day. I think if he knew their 3 or knew their 4 that he could rely on, this team could have gone further.
All right. So the talent in this side is undeniable. The composition of it or the makeup might need a little bit of work. Their biggest free agent or player out of contract is Manny Aparicio. Is that where you're looking in terms of the key to the offseason, Oliver Platt, or does it reside somewhere else?
No, it starts there. The team is a very different team with and without Aparicio. And so if he decides to move on, that's something that obviously you have to have a little bit of a rethink, I think, about the identity of the team, the players you're building around, because I don't think they build around anyone more than him. So that is kind of the first domino to fall. And then there's other needs as well. Like they need some left-footed players on a very basic level. Left back, a right winger who can play on his left foot. That was something that I thought they lacked all season long.
Jordan, what about you? What do they need?
Ollie brings up great points, but I think straight number 9, Ongaro, you brought in to be a big dog. It didn't really work out. Gennaro Daniels, big frame, played against him, throws his body around, but is not going to score 7 goals for a season. I think they need someone down the middle that says, I'm that guy. Aguero Diaz in his prime for Pacific would have been a perfect fit. Someone similar to that profile could really put that team in the right position.
A big offseason for Pacific because they're close. And sometimes the best additions come through subtraction. And the best move that was made all year was the hydro pole coming down. So preferable camera angles for these One Soccer broadcasts. Bye-bye, hydro pole. Hello, Highview. Hello, good times in the future for Pacific. That was a One Soccer Today special.